Freedom is a state of mind, and it is a place that's hard to find. I've searched high and low, with nowhere left to go. Homelessness is not a disease, it just brings you down to your knees.
These are the words of one rough sleeper who sells poems in return for money and food. He is one of the 60% of people who develop mental illness living on the streets. The likeliness of this happening to a homeless person is 5 times as high as the general population. In Manchester, cuts to vital mental health services have already begun, and with an announced £1.1 billion shortfall in their health and social care budget, more are already expected. The cuts have already begun to take their toll on local charities. One man, who inspired homeless charity Coffee for Craig, suffered the greatest tragedy while living on the streets.
2 years previously, he was your normal average guy. He was driving a BMW, eating the best steak, going to Sainsbury's for his food, and he became quite ill. He got sanctioned. He got diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and then it just kind of went downhill from there. He went from pillar to post. He couldn't really accept the fact that he was ill. He went into flats and then couldn't cope with it, came out and ended up homeless on the streets.
When Craig passed away, Coffee for Craig became the first emergency shelter in Salford. Becoming more aware of cases like this, Salford City Council are working to improve their services.
I think the reality is there's probably in our experience, not a case of more mental health issues and homelessness, it's a case of more awareness of what's always been there. So what we're trying to do is key people into services better. We're looking at developing pathways into those more specialist mental health provision, but also to work with supported accommodation providers to hopefully get them to prioritise people in the highest level of need. And mental health is an incredibly critical part of getting somebody back on a path to sustainability.
Sophie Dawson says there's a huge correlation between mental health and the homeless, and unfortunately there's very little government help. Another issue homeless people face is addiction. They may turn to alcohol or drugs as a way to escape from the real world. A study suggests people who have faith and attend church are less likely to turn to these addictions. And with services failing homeless people, they do often turn to this form of help.
At 14 I started taking drugs, and at 17 I was a heroin addict and homeless. At 21 I was a methadone addict and roaming the streets most of the time trying to get more. For 15 years I kept taking drugs and wondering why I wanted it every day so passionately, and then I'd had enough at one point, and I reached that part of my life where I asked for help from God, and I knew there was a God, but I didn't know his grace and I didn't know his love completely. I didn't know that I was forgiven without doing anything, and something happened. The appetite for drugs went, and I felt freer.
After finding freedom for himself, Tony now works with the homeless to help them do the same.
They want help, and they realise, a lot of them, that the only real help that they can get, having tried services and support workers, of which I am one, right, is supernatural. It's as simple as that. Something that doesn't actually make sense to the natural world, and God is that.
Jordan Ashley says more homeless people turn to religion as a way out. It's all about freedom. The rise in faith in homelessness could be giving people the new lease of life that they need.